also, thank you. I am also serving as a representative of the English department for the New Mexico Humanities Now Pathways Grant, which is funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. And its whole goal is to, number one, increase the number of CNM, UNM humanities degrees, and to develop academic and professional skills through building better pathways across community colleges and Research One universities. So it's a whole team, and I'm sure many of you are familiar in various capacities and with different units and departments who are working on this grant. From history to American studies, to Chicano studies, to Native American studies. So it's very interdisciplinary in the sense that it's bringing together all of the different humanities across the College of Arts and Sciences at UNM, and of course at CHES, at CNM. So this summit, it actually comes on the heels of some larger summits that have taken place. There was a CNM UNM Humanities Faculty Summit that took place on February 25th. And so Trish and I have sort of been working together since January to sort of plan how to build better collaborative and joint ventures across campuses. And so this was one way that we thought we could at least bring together our faculty members and our various subgroups and just kind of have a meeting of minds and really just become aware of what it is we're doing across campuses. And eventually we would like to have a really sustained conversation and dialogue about how to build better pathways and how to really develop better course alignment and to really think about how can we better serve our students coming in from CNM and how can we sort of build our strengths with the assistance of what CNM is doing, particularly in their creative writing program. So actually, I do want to give my colleague and my partner at CNM a chance to introduce herself as well. We want to actually have faculty introductions just so we can know who we are. So, you know, we don't have too many folks in the room, so I think we can safely go through everyone's your name, your title and affiliation, and then just your area of interest or expertise in terms of, you know, what are you working on now? And then what do you hope to get out of this conversation? And so if we can begin with my partner and then she can sort of segue into other folks and we can start to get to know each other.
Well, thank you. I'm Trish O'Connor. I am currently co-chair of English at CNM, and I've been working with Melina. It's been a great partnership. My areas of expertise are teach English 1110P, but also 2120. And in our school, we kind of focus on creative nonfiction as an introduction to creative nonfiction in 2120. My background before going back to school as a graduate student very late in life was I was a freelance writer. I was a journalist, a feature journalist for magazines and newspapers, and I focused primarily on profiles and on writers and artists, but I wrote about anything. And I think that having a well-rounded background is very useful to our students. It certainly was for me. I'm going to pass this on to my co-chair, Becky Zerger.
Hi everybody, I'm Becky Zerger, as just said, and I'm co-chair with Trish of the English department. My background is in literature from UNM. Before that, I had a bachelor's degree in communications and did like public relations work for college. And I primarily teach composition, like most of us at CNM, with some tech writing. I was a grant writer for CNM for 10 years, grant writer and technical writer in the development office when I was just starting. So have a little bit of a tech writing background. And I'm really hopeful that I'm excited that Trish got a course release, got some time to focus on transfer. I mean, as co-chairs, we've had so much other stuff going on with COVID and moving online and shows and scheduling. And so I'm just excited that some resources were put toward transfer. So I'm not Trish's coattail. It's terrible. Trying to pick up some other stuff so she can dedicate time to that. And I'll pass to Rebecca, who has my same first name.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Aronson. I've been at CNM for, I think, 11 or 12 years now. And I teach, of course, composition, sometimes technical writing, the introductions to poetry and fiction courses, and sometimes the general introduction to creative writing. My background is I did a master's degree at UNM before their MFA program many years ago in English with a sort of emphasis in creative writing, and then went on to University of Washington and did an MFA in poetry. At CNM, I coordinate the Visiting Writers Program along with in conjunction with the library and the Leonardo folks. I run the CNM main campus writing group. I also, outside of CNM, am the host to music and performance literature series called Badmouth, which has been on pandemically online for a while. And I'm currently serving on the Albuquerque Poet Laureate Committee, which is fun and interesting. And the last thing is I have a book coming out, my third book coming out in a few months, and I'm working on a fourth book of poetry. And I just want to understand better how UNM and CNM can work together to sort of smooth the pathways for our students who tend to kind of move back and forth. They take some classes at both places, and I'd love to see how they can get the most out of that. Should I go ahead and pick somebody? I'll pick Adam.
I had a feeling you were going to say my name. All right. Let's see. My name is Adam Crittenden, full-time faculty, chess English. Areas of interest, intro to creative writing. We, in 2018, 2019, Rebecca and Jennifer Schaller, myself, we worked on getting our version of this course at CNM. I reached out to Dan and some people at New Mexico State. And I'm really proud of the class. It fills up every semester. Students seem to enjoy it. And I guess what I want to get out of this conversation is I want to see maybe more or less in the past few years what maybe has changed at UNM's for UNM's intro to creative writing, or what you're doing with that class exactly. And let's see, my background, I forgot to say, I got my MFA in poetry at New Mexico State. So that's why I wear this. That's essentially it as far as my own writing goes. I've sort of taken a little bit of a hiatus since the pandemic to get my mental health right. But I do plan to get back into prose poetry and flash fiction. That's kind of where my mind has been at lately in terms of my own writing. So thank you all. I have to nominate someone, don't I? Jessica Mills.
I knew that, Adam. So good morning, everybody. My name is Jessica Mills. I am currently a full-time English faculty at CNM in chess. I've been at CNM since 2009 when I started teaching in SAGE. And for those who might not know SAGE, that is the DevEd school at CNM. And my background is a bachelor's in English with a minor in anthropology. My master's is in secondary English education. So think, grades 5 through 12. And currently at CNM. So I transferred from Dev Ed at CNM into chess English in 2012, and I have been teaching primarily composition courses at first, both 1110 and 1120, now mostly focused on English 1110p. But thanks to Dr. Brian Hudson in our CNM English department, who asked if I would be interested in teaching digital storytelling, I'm now in my second semester of teaching that also. And that is, I think, how I fit into this creative writing conversation. That's been a really wonderful experience. Since I'm new to it, learning right alongside of my students, and then, continuing to develop the class in different ways because of my experience with my students. And also in the fall, am going to be teaching an honors course, the graphic novel as literature. So not creative writing, but, analysis of a creative medium as literature. I'm really thrilled to be able to develop that over the summer and teach that in the fall. I wish it could be in person, but times they are a changing. So I am going to be planning for that online with hopes that, we'll get enough enrollment for it to make. Let's see. So that's background. Oh, and then outside of CNM, I publish my own nonfiction writing. So I don't really have a strong, I'm not a fiction writer myself, but during the pandemic, I did get some poetry published, which was a new thing for me. And but my primary mode of writing is just, nonfiction, magazine columnist, for example, published a memoir-ish type of book in 2007. I've written chapters for anthologies, but they're all nonfiction type of writing. And to that end, I now nominate Chris Prentice.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Prentice. I'm full-time English instructor at CNM. Because we started with CNM, everyone's been CNM so far. Maybe I'll pick someone UNM next. So I am a UNM English major myself. I graduated from UNM English department in 2007. And then I went to UT Austin. And then I have PhD there and wrote about British Lit. And then since then been here at CNM and have been teaching mostly Comp 1 and Comp 2. I'm one of two faculty advisors with Carly Harshlipp of the Leonardo, which is our CNM Student Literary Arts magazine. So that's my connection to the creative writing world. I actually don't really write anything creatively. It's much more old school critical scholarship sort of stuff that I have writing chops in, if I have any writing chops at all, actually. Also emails. I write a lot of emails. Assignments. I write a lot of assignments, and feedback. I spend a lot of time writing feedback. Just thinking of the things I write off the top of my head. But Leonardo is our awesome student literary arts magazine. And so there's a whole stuff that's involved in all that, as I'm sure you can imagine. We have student editors, and we print one issue a year, and we have an online presence, and we have digital copies that we publish, and then we have the visiting writer event every year. We have an open mic night in the fall. So that's where I get connected to creative writing, and that's kind of why I'm here too, is just to find out more about what the student literary arts publication opportunities are at UNM, who's there doing that kind of stuff, just so that I can know who we can send all of our awesome student editors to when they're like done with us. It's like, what's the next step? Where do they go at UNM? So I'll have a better idea of that, who to email, who to hook them up with. How about Diane?
Thank you, Chris. I noticed that. I also noticed everyone was CNM. I thought, hey, who's going to call on us? But it's really nice to meet all of you. Some of you I've met before, also in this kind of setting, because I've been working with Melina and Trish and others in the department on the the CNM UNM transfer for the 2240, which is our introductory course for English studies. But I'm a Regents professor at UNM and also the associate chair for undergraduate studies. And, you know, I blinked my eye and I've been at UNM for 20 years. I mean, so it sort of happens that way sometimes. So I kind of, I'm originally from Florida, then went up to Providence, Rhode Island, and lived there while I was, you know, going to Brown and getting my undergrad and grad degrees. And then I came out here and have been here for 20 years. So it's kind of, you know, actually, well, in between, I went back to Miami, I should say, and then I came out here. But so let's see. So all my kids were born here, so I'm kind of feel very native New Mexican, you know, through them as well. So, but I teach mostly in the creative writing program, though I also teach other courses too as needed, and I do this as associate chair. I do this kind of the 2240, which introduces students to all of the areas in the English department. And I'm very excited about a new book that I haven't published, a poetry book in a while, but I have actually have the galley sitting right here. You know, so I'm very excited about this coming out. It's a book called Questions from Outer Space, and I've been dealing with, you know, the final details of that up till now, and I'm working on another book that I kind of have some of the poems that I didn't feel were quite finished for this book and all. And so I kind of have something else that is in progress at the moment. But I hope to create additional bridges, and it's really nice to, you know, meet all of you and see you all again. So thanks.
How about Dan?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll Dan then, right.
I knew I'd be called on eventually, and you know, I suddenly feel like you know, a student again, and you know, junior high or high school, being called upon and thinking, oh no, okay. But here I am. I'm Dan Mueller. I'm a full professor in the English department at UNM. I teach in the creative writing program as a fiction writer. Like Diane, I've been here 21 years actually. And I've never loved living anywhere more than I have here in Albuquerque. I feel deeply committed to our creative writing program and the English department as a whole. I have a position not unlike Diane's, only at the graduate level. I'm the associate chair for graduate studies in English, and do my best to oversee all of the degree programs at the graduate level. I'm a fiction writer. I've published 2 collections of stories. I've completed a 3rd collection of stories, which I'm shopping around, and I'm deeply involved in a novel. The first the stories are called When Words Fail. The novel is tentatively called Share the Wonder, which is the Alaska State motto. Share the Wonder. I'm kind of more excited about the title than I am about the story at this point. But anyway, I'm deeply involved in it, and I'm here because I'm interested in the relationship between CNM and UNM, and doing all we can to facilitate a kind of smooth transition between the 2 programs, bolstering one another to the extent that we can. Anyway, it's a delight to meet you all. I'm glad to be here, and looking forward to taking part in today's summit, or mini summit. All right, I'll nominate, let's see, why don't I nominate Carly?
Hi, thanks, Dan. My name is Carly Harslip. I am a full-time English faculty at CNM. I've been there since also 2009. I also started in Sage, Jessica, so I don't know how we didn't know that about each other. My background is, so I actually did my undergraduate in creative writing at the University of Wisconsin way back in the day, and I started out as the poetry editor for their literary magazine, the Madison Review. And then I did my MFA in poetry at University of Michigan, and then has been in New Mexico ever since. So I teach the Intro to Creative Writing classes, as well as Intro to Poetry, as well as comp, of course, and occasionally Intro to Literature. And gosh, what else? I was taking notes because I was trying to hit everything that I needed to hit. And I also am the other faculty contact along with Chris Prentice for Leonardo, our literary arts magazine. And I'm just excited for opportunities for collaboration between CNM and UNM. I feel like the creative writing arts are really important and sometimes get overlooked. And I am interested in new ways of being able to promote that. So I think I'm going to nominate, let's nominate the other Jessica Brophy.
Hi, I'm Jessica Maggie Brophy. Thanks for having me. I'm a part-timer at CNM. I've been teaching for 18 years and been at CNM for 3 years. Sort of one of those gypsy adjuncts by choice. Part-timing seems to suit my temperament and lifestyle needs. I've taught at the graduate level creative writing at SNHU's online MA program. And at CNM, I teach obviously academic writing, and then the intro to creative writing and the intro to creative nonfiction. I've drawn to reading lots of American female poets and African-American female poets. That's what I did my dissertation on at Morgan State in Baltimore, which is a HBCU. I was on diversity scholarship there, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. Currently, I am really into expressive writing, which is not necessarily about the craft of creative writing, but writing to de-stress, to express yourself. Starting a small business called The Writing Shed. And so it will be a life writing community for people to write and gain journaling and poetry tools. I'm a poet, you know, that's how I self-identify, shopping around a third collection called Invocation to Margaret's, learning about my Irish roots and spiritual ancestry. So once that finds a home, I will prostrate on the ground and kiss it and thank Mother Earth. I will be so happy. And I'm just here, you know, to represent the part-timers, to give us a face, and to learn more from you guys about how we give our students confidence as creative writers, and then maybe even as expressive writers in a lot of our generative stages. And I will nominate Jennifer Schaller.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Maggie. My name is Jennifer Schaller, and I am an English teacher at CNM. And I graduated from UNM's MFA program in 2007. And I started working at CNM in 2008. And then in 2010, I became full-time faculty. And so let me see, areas of interest and expertise. So I've within the English department at CNM, I've worked to co-develop some open educational resources for our students. So we have the comp reader for English 1110, 1120, and then also a text for English 1210, which is a workplace writing program or workplace writing course. We don't have that or that isn't offered at UNM. It's like for applied science degrees at CNM. And then I also write creative nonfiction, and I dabble in poetry. I'm working on a manuscript. I'm working on my 3rd draft of it. And I publish essays. And I think that's about it for me. What I hope to get out of this conversation would be just, I mean, I know, I guess how UNM is different from when I went there, because I did my undergrad and my graduate degrees there. And so I'm sure it's changed because things are changing all the time, and the degrees even changed. So I know a little bit about the degree, but I guess more knowing how to prepare our students at CNM for when they transfer over to UNM, what should they expect. Also maybe like our CNM students, I love them. They're the sweetest and most adorable students ever. They really like to write about zombies. So I'm just wondering like what you guys think about zombies and werewolves, and what should we tell them, if they're going to take a fiction class at the 300 level, what to expect at UNM. So anyway, that's about it. Thanks. I'm going to nominate someone, but I came late because I was at another meeting, so I don't know who's gone. So how about Marisa? Have you gone?
Good morning and hello to everyone. I'm glad to be here today. My name is Marisa Clark, and I just want to say I see familiar faces. Good morning to everyone, etc. It is morning, so my talking's a little off. I am finishing my 23rd year of work at UNM with a leave semester that I am dedicating to working on poetry manuscripts. So I'm rested, and that is something I haven't been able to say for a long time, the morning notwithstanding. I hold a master's degree in 20th century American literature and a PhD in creative writing and fiction. I write creatively in all genres, though I have been concentrating on poetry for the past few years. At UNM, I teach a 4-3 load. Curricular changes, budgeting, etc., has meant that I have taught more and more composition classes, but I have also taught creative writing in every genre at the undergraduate level. I've taught queer lit at the undergraduate and graduate levels, and for 4 years in the past, and in the upcoming year, I will be the faculty advisor of Blue Mesa Review. That position is currently held by our Director of Creative Writing, Lisa Chavez, who couldn't be here this morning because of a variety of defenses and other things that she had going on. I'm here to build bridges, as Diane said, and I also just wanted to respond about the zombies and werewolves and say that I used to be dead set against the zombies and werewolves and forbid them in my classes. And now I am just like, please write, please enjoy writing. I don't know where you're going forward, but I try to like say, here's what we expect academically in most cases, but let's open up our writing a little bit more. And I've tried to teach more stories that are blending genre elements with what I think is really good examples of the craft that we're trying to teach. So thanks for that. Let's see. Dan, I was going to call on you just so I could say your name and say hello and good to see you, my friend. And instead, Rebecca Aronson, I think you've gone. Jennifer Crone, have you gone? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So I'm Jennifer Crone Bourgeois. I am a part-time faculty member at CNM and have been so for 10 years. It's also 10 years ago that I have graduated from UNM's MFA program with a focus in poetry. I mostly teach composition courses, of course, but I do occasionally teach technical writing, the creative writing intro class, the intro to poetry, intro to fiction, and the creative nonfiction class here at CNM. And I'm taking a break on my flash fiction and poetry, which I'm focused on submitting. I'm submitting a manuscript of poetry and hoping that that finds a home at some place. And I am currently working on a vampire novel. So, that's been a fun change of pace for me. And what I hope to get out of the conversation is it's been 10 years since I've been at the program. So I imagine that there have been changes, kind of how I view the pedagogy around creative writing has changed. So I'm interested in seeing like how it's changed at UNM and how I can prepare my students, especially because I have a lot of students who are really passionate about creative writing, but also maybe want that to be the elective. They're majoring to something else. So like how, and they're coming to me trying to get a sense of where they can get that outlet. So I kind of thinking about them, and as they're transferring to UNM, what I can advise them on that. So thank you. And I think I'm going to nominate Felicia.
Good morning, everyone. So thanks, Jen. I'm Felicia Caton Garcia, and I don't write about them, but I really enjoy reading about zombies and werewolves and vampires. Probably anything that evades genre is actually my favorite kind of work. So I am full-time faculty at CNM. I am faculty in American Studies and Chicane Studies, but because I have an absurd collection of degrees, I also have taught and was a full-time faculty in the English department. I think I've taught every class the English department offers except for technical writing classes. I have an MFA in creative writing from University of Oregon, and then I did my PhD in American Studies at UNM. And I am currently, so my areas of interest and expertise, I write and publish in poetry and fiction, including a book of poetry that was published by the University of New Mexico Press. I have not been doing as much writing and publishing as I would like to be doing. I have a novel that's perpetually in progress as far as I can tell. It's just sort of a work that I'll be working on as revising perhaps for the rest of my life. Because what I've been working on for the past couple of years has been, I'm serving an interim position as the diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist, working to set up an office, CNM's very first office of equity and inclusion. And I have also been doing a lot of work with critical and liberatory pedagogy. I'm currently a co-organizer for an international conference that will be happening this summer, looking at critical, liberatory, emancipatory pedagogies and teaching as a reparative practice. And what I would hope that we get out of this conversation is just continued ways to support our students, to support one another as a larger community of writers, and also our respective programs. And I'll hand it off to Brian if he's available.
Yeah, Osio Teju, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So Osio, my name is Brian Hudson. I teach Native Studies. I teach a lot of composition like the rest of my colleagues, but I also teach digital storytelling. And so that's what I've been doing in the last few years. I've developed a few digital storytelling classes, which the students seem to really enjoy. My background, I have a doctorate in Native American literatures from the University of Oklahoma. And what I'm hoping to get out of this conversation is, I'm not sure. I think my colleagues covered it, right? I just want to see how we can build bridges between the two institutions when it comes to creative writing. Creative writing all too often I find is undervalued at too many institutions.
Thank you, everyone. Sandra Rourke. I don't believe we got your introduction.
Let's see. Hi. All right, last one up. Cool. I'm Sandra Rourke. I'm CNM faculty. I've been there for 10 years and then at NMSU for 5 years before that. My background's in short fiction and creative non-writing and online teaching and learning. Let's see. Something I'm working on now, I'm working on a collection of short stories. I think I'm feeling generational homeland pulls. So I'm writing about the Louisiana swamps because that's where I'm from, and sort of interconnected generational tales. So that's been fun. It's been a little while since I've focused on a project like that. Let's see, I teach composition, I teach creative nonfiction, I teach fiction, occasionally technical writing, kind of a jack of all trades, I guess. And what do I hope to get out of it? Yeah, much like everyone else was saying, I want students to have a smooth path. I'm not super familiar with UNM's program. I've never attended there. So it's primarily been what I've learned from students over the years that have come back and talked to me about what their transfer was like. So I'd like to learn more about that and have more faculty conversations about making that transition smoother. And I don't have to nominate anybody. Ha.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It's really good to meet everybody. Just to follow up on Diane's mentioning of the 2240, we were able to pilot that course as kind of a bridge course in the fall of 21. So we were able to reserve 5 seats in that course, which is one of the core courses for the major. It's a 1 credit hour course. It's an 8-week course. So we did have 1 student from CNM make it through the course last semester, and currently we have 3 students who have registered and who are taking the course face-to-face. Last semester was still online, or at least via Zoom. So I think it's very encouraging that we have, 3 times as many students this semester, even though it's still out on a smaller scale than what we had originally anticipated. So I feel like there's a lot of potential to build around that collaboration and that particular pathway that gets CNM students to UNM before they actually transfer. So they enroll as UNM students, they're admitted as UNM students. So I'm very happy that we were able to get that off the ground, and just hope we can continue to build the momentum. So this is also part of the objective of these mini summits. I also wanted to mention that Trish and I attended the New Mexico Transfer Summit, which just took place on Wednesday. So all of these conversations are really happening not just on the local level, but they're happening on the state level. And as a part of this Mellon grant, they're also happening at the national level. So Trish was actually able to attend the morning session of the New Mexico Transfer Summit, which was hosted by the New Mexico Department of Higher Education. She brought back a lot of key data and information. And so I'm going to actually turn it over to Trish so she can sort of go over some of the information that she gathered from that New Mexico Transfer Summit, and that might give us some talking points that can, lead us into some direction about how to build better collaborative, relationships across our institutions. So if I can turn it over to Trish.
Thank you. I just pulled a few of the talking points I thought might be apropos to our conversation. One of the big concerns is that few students transfer and even fewer complete degrees upon transfer. And I didn't put it in the slide because I'm not sure I remember the data correctly, but I believe it's 17% transfer, and of those 15% finish their degrees. It's not great. I'm not sure I got those numbers right. That's why you're not seeing them on the slide. The obstacles to transfer are generally institution-made. Poor communication between institutions, poor advisement, ineffective alignment of courses, misalignment of course numbering. There are many ways in which what they call the supply chain breaks down. And that's one reason why we want to have these conversations. The obstacles disproportionately hamper first-generation, non-traditional, low-income, and BIPOC students who can't afford to waste time and money on unnecessary credits. And that's something we really should be paying attention to. And the burden is often inappropriately placed on the student. Too often students blame themselves if they can't navigate the transfer system and give up. And that is really something I think we need to address, is they need more mentorship. And then there's the plus and minus of the swirling student. I think Rebecca Aronson mentioned that we have students who have a foot in both our institutions, or more than our institutions. Maybe they're 5 feet and they have them in various institutions. I'm just making that up, but the swirling student has a negative connotation. The word transfer student often has a negative connotation. And the most negative association is the student who transfers to a 4-year or starts at a 4-year and then for whatever reason doesn't feel like they belong or doesn't succeed and returns to the 2-year. That is the negative framing. But some of the conversation that came up in that meeting or in the summit was actually ways of thinking of reframing and rethinking how we approach the notion of transfer. The old metaphor was the pipeline. And the pipeline suggests that there's a solid unit from one place to another and that the problems are leaks in the pipeline. The new metaphor is a supply chain, that there are breakdowns sometimes of connections between what one institution offers and another one receives or offers. And we need to rethink about how we present that, what we offer to each other in clear communication. One suggestion was to replace the term transfer or swirling student with the notion of multi-institutional student. With better advisement, communication, and support, students can cobble together useful degrees if they know what they're doing. So to illustrate, one of our students approached me in particular, but I know this has happened with other faculty. I'm just going to tell this one story. She wants to go into editing. She wants to complete her AA in our program in English, and she wanted a class in traditional grammars. Well, we haven't offered that class at CNM for quite some time, but I could say, you know, you could cross the street to UNM and take that class there. It'll apply to your AA, and you also, if you want to go to UNM, you've got one under your belt. That's one way in which we can thoughtfully work with multi-institutional students. Another way is sometimes classes are offered in rotation. For example, we offer early and late literature courses and so on in rotation. Perhaps that course that they need is not offered in our rotation, but it's offered in yours. They can cross the street and we can work those things thoughtfully. Also, in an undergraduate degree, the students have, within reason, some ability to kind of tailor their focus if they know where they're going. And like that student who was interested in going into editing, she knew she wanted a grammars class that was useful and purposeful. So backwards planning is one of the big topics of conversation, not just thinking from undergrad to high school but from grad all the way down to K-112. Thinking or considering how many of our students are first generation or non-traditional students who might not see themselves with higher degrees unless that they can imagine what that might look like. And so another piece of that conversation is to foster talent pathways, to early in a student's career identify areas of interest or talent that may or may not lead them in various directions, but give them exposure to different avenues of study early so that they can visualize where the next step will lead them. One challenge for non-traditional students and actually for two-year students, whether they're at UNM, CNM, or wherever, is that they sometimes get so bogged down in satisfying their core requirements that they don't see the good classes, right? They don't get that introduction to where this all can take them. And so that's a conversation I think would be useful for us to have, is how can our intro to creative writing students and your intro to creative writing students see themselves with MFAs? How can students in our comp classes see themselves in a creative writing class, let alone a MFA? And so we want to talk about this in a bigger way to provide peer and institutional mentoring. Maybe that's having students come, transfer students come back to CNM to talk about their experiences. Maybe it's having faculty from various institutions guest speak. What does that look like? So opening those conversations and knowing who our students are. Our students are largely non-traditional, but we have, obviously we have dual enrollment students and traditional students, and we have that's what a community college is all about. And something to know about our students is that they do love creative writing. And did a little junior basic data collection. And as you know, probably enrollment is down, particularly in the community college level. It was going down before the pandemic. The pandemic took it down even further. And I believe, and Becky can correct me, we're down 25%. But even with low enrollment at CNM, we ran 6 sections of 2310, the Intro to Creative Writing, in the spring, 4 of which were online, 2 face-to-face. And UNM ran 4 sections, 3 face-to-face, 1 online, which is an interesting ratio. UNM does not offer Intro to Poetry or Intro to Fiction. And just so you know, we call our 2120 an Intro to Creative Nonfiction. It's focused in that way. But in any case, UNM does not offer Intro to Poetry or Intro to Fiction. And yet in times of low enrollment, we ran 2 poetry and 1 fiction in the spring and 2 fiction and 1 poetry in the fall, both made, yet our literature classes struggled. So that's information I just want you all to have. Who are we bringing to you? People who are invested in creative writing. So how do we ease that path and help prepare them? I don't know that Stephanie Hans is here today. No? Okay. So I'm sure there's so much more data to be brought to us from UNM. That's what I have to give you from CNM. So what do we have in common at the 2000 level? Obviously, introduction to creative writing, intermediate comp, technical and professional writing, and we have undergraduate student publications that can be in conversation. Chris, I know you spoke a little bit about Leonardo, and I hope there's someone from Conception Southwest who can also speak. Chris and Harley, I'm sorry, Carly, do you want to add a little something about Leonardo?
Sure, yeah, it's, we, as I say, publish a print issue. We try to publish a print issue. During the pandemic, we went all online, but our executive council of students gave us a big funding to print the back pandemic issues, as well as this year's. And we were used to printing, so we print our issues once a year. Carly, how many issues do we print? They're all 50-page. You can look at all of them online if you go to that link.
Yeah, usually around 200, just because we usually, in years past, we've gotten sort of a round sum of about $1,000, and the print shop that we're working with, the deal that they've given us is 200 issues for $1,000. I'm actually going to pick up the issues later today. So so we come out once a year with it. We've been around for quite a while. We've existed in various iterations before this. I believe we started in 1991 as just a zine that was photocopied, basically. And we've developed and grown since then.
That's right. So we, like, you know, just to make it quick, we have like between 4 and 6 student editors, and we publish between like 25 and 35 students a year. And it's in creative nonfiction, visual arts, poetry, and fiction. And then on our website, we have something called Leonardo Longform, which we can publish year round. And it's like a nice outlet for us. If we can't get the piece into the magazine because it's too long, or because for whatever reason, there were just a lot of great pieces, we couldn't fit it in, we can now publish it on Leo Longform. So it's just one of those things that we get to see the culmination of CNM's creative writing program. We get to see we get to reap the fruits of that. I mean, I was just talking to Sandra Rourke the other day about this, how, you know, there's these teachers teaching creative writing at CNM, and then students are like working with them, writing pieces, and then we get these pieces at Leonardo and we're publishing them. And it's really quite direct. You know, when we come out every year with the new issue, it's always like Sandy and Rebecca and Brad and Brian. They can always just pick out the students like, yep, that's one of ours, that's one of ours, that's one of ours. You know, it's not a surprise that these students are the ones who are getting published, or that these are the works that were selected. But it is, you know, done by student editors. We don't know that while we're selecting pieces, but, you know, big surprise, like the better pieces have been, you know, crafted with help from professors. So it's an in-house operation, I think, unlike Blue Mesa. But I put the website in there if you want to take a look at us, and I put the digital edition of the 2021 issue if you want to give a scroll to that. But we just are super, super proud of it. I mean, the writing in there is real. The stories are really moving. It's quality. So anyway.
We've also done open mic events as well in conjunction with the magazine. That's all.
Yeah, and you're having your launch, your release, not your launch, your release event, right, which is tied to the writers, visiting writers. Yeah, so I want to also announce that to everyone again. I've been announcing it to our folks at different, you know, students, faculty, whatnot, trying to get more people to sort of attend and see what you all are doing, which I think it's a great venue. Our equivalent would be Conception Southwest, which unfortunately is not housed under the English department. I tried to get a couple of the students or representatives to come, and I think, you know, I didn't get much of a reply. What I can say about, you know, student publication is that I think it's a great venue to just get used to how does that work? What does it look like to publish your work? And the sooner that students can see themselves publishing, you know, the better. So at the undergraduate level, you know, I think that's the optimal time. I actually did publish in Conception Southwest when I was a graduate student. And, you know, one of my sort of major publications as, you know, a tenure track faculty came out in Atzlan, the Journal of Chicano Studies, which is like the premier journal in my field, but it actually began in Best Student Essays. That's really where I laid the groundwork for that major publication. So I just, you know, in terms of just like advocating for student publication, I think these are really good venues to really, you know, put it in students' heads, minds, you know, that they can actually conceptualize themselves as published writers. And I think that's where it begins. And the sooner it begins, the better, that we can really use it as a way to, you know, pathway, right? To sort of not just pathway to the completion of an undergraduate degree, but possibly even beyond that, you know, to a graduate degree and other major venues for publishing. So Marisa, you're here. You actually, if you can say a few things about Blue Mesa Review, which is kind of the next step beyond undergraduate student publications. If you can maybe say a few words.
I'll try to say a few words about it. Blue Mesa Review has been around, I think, for going on 30 years now. It started, it was founded by Rudolfo Anaya and 3 other creative writing professors. And about 15 years ago, it became the provenance of the graduate students, the MFA program. They started to get the experience editing the magazine and so forth. It went from a print publication to an online publication. It comes out twice a year. The fall semester is for the contest issue, and the spring semester is for the I'm not in the contest issue. And last time I was faculty advisor was 2015, 2016. So it's been a little while, but it is a national/international magazine. And it does not allow our students the experience of publication. It actually doesn't want people affiliated with UNM to be trying to publish there for, I think, 5 years. However, it gives our MFA program students the opportunity to get the behind the scenes experience, get the editing experience, the magazine and publication experience. And it has introduced our undergraduate students as well to that process. It is a class and it can be taken more than once. We actually like it when students are repeat offenders within the class, because they just like their experience grows and grows. So that's what I can tell you. Any questions?
I appreciate that. I've been learning a lot. Really quick question. Is Conception Southwest, does it have undergraduate student editors, or is it just for publishing? I didn't know about Conception Southwest. I gotta do my research.
No, neither did I.
I've never worked with Conception Southwest, but it is, I believe it is staffed by undergraduates in creative writing. And we also have Scribendi through the Honors College and Best Student Essays. So
yeah, so Conception Southwest, it primarily publishes creative writing. The Best Student Essays is sort of the academic publication. And it's all, the Conception Southwest is all undergraduate student run. And I've had a couple students who have sat on the board, sat on the staff. And so, but yes, so it is, I think, the best equivalent to Leonardo. So I think that's an area where, if, you know, not directly related to the English department, certainly, you know, part of the whole conversation about creative writing and just undergraduate student development, professionalization, and publication, you know, so, and they publish once a year, and they've been around for about 40 years. So I do think that there's more to develop in that area, and more that I would need to do as well in terms of making those connections across campus, because it isn't housed in the English department, but certainly, you know, an area of growth, potential growth and potential collaboration.
Folks, I'm concerned we're going to run out of time. So I'd like to speed ahead, but I want to share with you quickly that we do have our course descriptions and a few sample syllabi linked to the slideshow. And so you will have access to what our institutions both offer. And you might notice that we offer a lot of creative writing, you know, at CNM. But let's open this conversation if that's okay. Is this, you good? Yeah, okay. Because I think we have a lot that we can really talk about. So how can CNM Intro to Poetry and Fiction help? This is one place we can start a conversation, but also, you know, let's go the other way. How can UNM help inform us so that we can better prepare? So here's a few questions that we can start the conversation with. How can CNM Intro to Fiction, Poetry, and Creative Nonfiction help prepare students for 300 level workshop? How can we recruit students to see creative writing and possibly MFA, build coordinating pathways, increase the number of majors? Those are just thoughts. You guys, let's have a conversation. So I'm just going to stop sharing so we can look at each other and have a conversation.
Can I tell a quick story? Yeah. Okay. So I have to take my kid to an orthodontist appointment in a minute, but I just wanted to say that I went to undergrad at UNM, and I didn't really think about grad school. I was probably about 22 or 23. And then I took a class with Greg Martin, and he was the one who kind of planted the seed in my head that I should go to grad school. Like, I thought that grad school was for old people. So I don't know if like our students now have those ideas, but that was my idea about grad school. And so sometimes I just think really, you just need someone to tell you, yeah, you should totally go to grad school. Like yeah, that's all.
Thank you. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a lot of it is demystifying the experience of what it means to be a grad student, and to really open up, students' thinking and just minds to be able to see themselves in that direction. And, I'm a first gen student, underrepresented. I was a young mother, mother at 18. And so in my whole life, I was on a different trajectory. And, I think at some point in my undergraduate career, it became apparent to me that, oh, this is something that I can really do. But it still took me a while to sort of find my footing. I started out as a Spanish major, and then I went into English major, and then I ended up as an American Studies major. So Felicia, we are actually colegas in some ways down the line, but I think you're actually ahead of me in terms of your PhD program. But in any event, I think the point is like, now, and I find myself back in the English department, so it's a very interesting kind of circling back around. But now in our English department, we do have, a whole sequence of courses in ethnic American lit, which is what I was looking for back in the day. And I didn't see it at the time, but, American Studies was sort of the place for me at the time. So, so that's just sort of, adding to that conversation in terms of how important faculty are to encouraging and inspiring students. And this is a conversation Trish and I were having about, we expect, multi-institutional students to come to us. We expect community college students to come to the university. And that's really what we're trying to establish with the 2240 kind of bridge, program that we piloted. But I think we also need to go to community college students. We need to go, either by sending former, students who have transferred successfully, graduate students who are teaching these classes. The Intro to Creative Writing is largely taught by grad students at UNM, and also faculty. And as I was telling Trish, not just in, events that are asking students to accommodate their time, outside of class, but actually to go into the classrooms, because that's really where that inspiration, innovation, motivation occurs. So I don't want to spend too much time taking up the conversation, but does anyone else have?
Well, I'll just add that since you mentioned the 2240, that is something that that I like to do, even with those sophomores, those juniors, is actually start talking about, hey, maybe you would have an idea of going to grad school or other jobs that can come out of the English degree. But we always include also just this planting of seeds of like that you could go to grad school and all. I do want to say though that one thing about our MFA program is that we do deliberately keep it very small because we fund anyone who we take into the program. So I'm always encouraging, like when I have a really great writer I always say, oh, apply to a variety of different grad schools, different MFA programs. We can look at a few. And so, around the country, other places, because we typically only take, this is, like a couple a year in each genre, so it's, so that is why I do encourage, students get placement in a lot of very, great programs around the country and everything. So, but as far as I know that the other areas like the MA in Lit and rhetoric and writing and all, you guys do take more every year, right, Melina? Yeah. So
we fund in our PhD we fund two. We fund two, so we have usually top two candidates, and of course our funding model is come and teach for us. Which makes it it's an added layer of responsibility on top of everything else but I do think that they come away with a really good, and I think many people in the room might be able to attest to that. You come away with a very strong teaching experience, and we try to get students out of the comp classes and into their areas of study, their fields of study, so that there isn't a lot of those courses there, they have to get to a certain point before they can get into those courses. But we do try to diversify, all of our programs, right? In some ways, try to diversify the teaching experience of grad students. So are there other comments or questions from other folks about any of the points that Trish raised or that we've talked about so far?
I would just like to follow up about the money issue. I know for me, when I finished my undergrad, it was like, I'm not getting my master's because I already have $30,000 in loans, which, that's not that much compared to what I hear some other students saying. So I think there needs to be a conversation about money at the forefront. If UNM is only funding, a small number of students on a full ride, this conversation needs to be in conjunction with, your dreams of becoming a creative writer. To me, they just go together.
Well, maybe you didn't hear me when I said that. That's actually what we do. Every student that we accept, with there are a few exceptions if someone has like a full-time job and, or sometimes there's an occasional student that like works at the university or something like that. But almost every single student, it does get funded. And
that's awesome. Yeah.
Right. That the tuition, is waived, and then they have the income from teaching the class, which
is that like 6 a year or 10 a year?
You mean the income or well, I don't actually know exactly. Dan,
you do raise a good point.
Dan, do you know?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. Years ago, the creative writing faculty made a commitment to fund all of the MFA students that we admit. So you're right. We typically admit about 6 a year. That is, we're designated 2 TA-ships per genre. And, we've by and large upheld that. That is, we don't want to see our MFA students going into substantial debt for an MFA degree, mainly because the MFA degree doesn't really offer an avenue to pay it back. This isn't a professional degree. We're not training our students necessarily to go on the academic market. We're giving our students a kind of deep studio experience in fiction, creative nonfiction, and poetry. So I think by and large we succeed. Our students receive stipends of about $15,000 per academic year. They have to teach 2 classes, which is a huge teaching load that cuts into their writing time. It's not an ideal situation from my point of view, and I don't think from their point of view either. But on the plus side, as Melina said earlier, they do have substantial teaching portfolios, diverse teaching portfolios by the time they leave our program. And they've had, I think, a deep immersive experience in poetics and narrative craft, situating themselves, I think, to be writers in North America and the world.
So, thank you, Dan. Thanks, Diane. But Jessica, the point about cost differential is very important, especially when we're talking about students coming from CNM to UNM. Right now, under the grant that I'm working with, we're offering them scholarships that will make up the cost differential for that 1 credit hour class. But as soon as the grant goes away, I don't know if that's going to remain, those scholarships. So the cost is very much a reality. The economics of moving from a community college to an R1 university. And so I do just want to acknowledge that point. That's one of the things that we have to kind of figure out and get over. Jennifer, you've had your hand up.
All right, this kind of a little off track, but I suppose related. So I was wondering if they still use traditional model of workshops where, the writer sits quietly while everyone critiques their work. Because I have a lot of students who are super aware of their background, self-conscious about that. And that kind of model in and of itself may be a deciding factor on whether or not they want to take creative writing classes in an undergraduate model. And a lot of these same students are also trying to, they want to write this memoir, they want to write this novel, they're already on it, they're already working on that. And it might be the zombie werewolf things, it might be a memoir about their grandmother. And so I'm also concerned about that model, because a lot of times the workshop can devolve into people going, well, this is what I want to be reading instead of what you're writing. And I know that we can do things about that, but I'm just wondering if that's still heavily relied on, or if things have kind of changed there.
So Marisa, if I could jump in, Marisa Clark, I think she had to leave. Oh, there you are, Marisa. I'm sorry, but you did put in the chat, because you've been around for probably longer than most of us at UNM, and you saw the transition. I know you dye your hair that color. I know it's deliberate. So, but you did.
My hair dyed today for the first.
So I know you mentioned, before we changed our curriculum, we actually had these concentrations, right? And we did have more intro classes. And I don't know, and this is for a question for my colleagues, is this a time where maybe we need to go back to that other model and rethink our undergraduate curriculum and how we're sort of funneling students? And, this could really be, I think, part of building a kind of talent pathway, because right now, coming into the major, we kind of have a smorgasbord approach. You can kind of take whatever you want, but we still have those core courses that define you as an English major. So I wonder, is it time for us to sort of rethink and maybe go back to some of the things that we were doing before? That's just an open question. I don't know, Marisa, if you have something to say, and I know Trish, you have your hand up. And so, yeah. So Marisa, I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
I just want to say that I know that curricular changes and a lot of elements changed our enrollment, and I don't have the place in the department to determine all of that, but I wanted to speak to Jennifer Crone-Bourgeois' question here, just to say, I tried for the first time. I've tried different things along the way, But I actually spoke to my last workshop class about changing the model and how they wanted to run it. And they just kind of fell in to the previous way. But one of the things that I've always done that I think has been more and more beneficial is to take myself out of the initial conversation of the work and let the students meet to discuss the work and how it's going, see what they're excited about, what questions might come up. But yeah, I found that even opening it up to the author being able to discuss, et cetera, or to give us a little bit more guidance in the kind of feedback they wanted, was they still seem to be getting kind of quiet and so forth.
Trish.
I have 2 points. One is maybe it's time to rethink the notion of the non-traditional student, because so many of our students are non-traditional. It's not an aberration necessarily to be non-traditional. To be a 15-year-old in a college class is now common. To be a 30-year-old going back to school, or a 40-something-year-old going back to graduate school, should not be considered freakish, right? It's part of who we are as a community, and maybe we just need to be aware of that and treat our students with that acceptance. And the other thing I was thinking about is some of the conversations our faculty have had about how our intro classes can often be a bridge, and I don't mean intro to creative writing, but intro to fiction, poetry, and creative nonfiction maybe could be a gentle bridge between the intro, which is a little bit of a Whitman sampler, to the workshop classes, so that students are better able to withstand the rigors, just be better prepared. And I know some of our faculty have already spoken in CNM about that. I would like to invite our faculty to share more from your experience, from students who.
Could I say just a couple things? One thing I wanted to say just very briefly in response to Jennifer. And hi, Jennifer. I haven't seen you in a while, but my phone is just deciding to ring right now. So maybe actually someone else say something, and this might be an emergency, and I'll get right back to you.
Yeah, I wanted to hop into and respond to Jennifer's comments. I also teach 501, which is Introduction to the Profession for Creative Writing, that has a pretty huge pedagogy component. And one of the books that I taught last semester is Felicia Chavez's The Anti-Racist Workshop, which presents alternative models to the traditional workshop. Oh, you've got it right there, Jennifer. Yeah, it's a fantastic book. And so, in the pedagogy segments of 501, I have my students kind of think deeply about, all right, the traditional model from which, through which they, grew up, as well as alternative models as they are presented in the book that Jennifer just held up on the screen. And so to the extent that, we as creative writing faculty members are also training our MFA TAs to teach 2310, Intro to Creative Writing, my sense is that they are experimenting in the classroom with other models. So there is already, I think, a transition that is occurring kind of at the grassroots level at the early introduction classes that probably will percolate up to the 300 and 400 level classes, creative writing classes at the undergraduate level. I'll be teaching the graduate fiction workshop in the fall, and I'm going to give my students the opportunity to choose the model they want, kind of submission by submission. Some of them, no doubt, will gravitate to the traditional model. Others will want to try something else. And I'm going to give them two variations to choose from. And we'll see how it works. I've never done this before. I'm a little nervous about it, to be perfectly honest. But I'm also interested to see how it works. So, Diane, do you want to continue from there?
Yes, I'll just add a couple of thoughts. And sorry about that. Sometimes I'm sort of, wearing a few hats at once, and I thought this might end at 11:15, but I'm still here. But actually, I think that I personally think the workshop, it's a good idea to have that workshop element as just a part of it as well, where you really do a lot of reading, a lot of discussion of technique and craft and so on. And that just becomes like a part of it. And I know sometimes people are very heavy on the workshop, but I found that students really enjoy having it just be a component of it, that they're doing sometimes workshop, but also really being introduced to a lot of different kinds of poets, writers, from teaching nonfiction and all. So, and I did want to say, there are some realities sometimes about how these numbers work out. Like in hearing you Trish, when you were saying you had 6 classes in the 2310, and we ran very few, the 4 classes really the reality is that a lot of students do take certain classes at CNM because they cost less, than UNM, and then they use it as a bridge. And and some could look at it as like, hey, you're hurting our UNM enrollment, but that's why I think that this sort of, that thinking of us like that we're really working together on this is a better model to think of it. But it is a reality of why some of our enrollment in certain things has gone down. And we very deliberately though chose to make those intro to poetry, intro to fiction, intro to nonfiction as then the 2310, and how many years ago was that? I think that was,
it was probably, about 12 years, maybe now.
And then you go on to like the intermediate poetry and the advanced, or the intermediate fiction and the advanced fiction and all that. And so, but those are some things that are like, since it wasn't said, I kind of wanted to say it here that, you have some of the courses, because I know that students, and they tell me, and I have even my kids have friends who are doing things like that, you know what I'm saying? So, I know it from all kinds of angles, if you know what I'm saying. Like they say, well, take that class there at CNM because it's cheaper, and then transfer it over. So,
I think there are a couple of things. One of the points about the non-traditional student is actually they're more the norm than not, especially at CNM, but I would say also at UNM. I'm a non-traditional student. I went through school with 2 kids and a baby daddy and all of that, baggage and dirty laundry. And so, just figuring out those kinds of obstacles that our students are encountering. There are more non-traditional students than not. They are the norm. So I think number one, we kind of need to rethink that and dispel that myth, and I think we also need to dispel the competition, because I think what I am coming to understand, at least with the creative writing, is that CNM students who are taking these intro courses are actually coming in better prepared. They're not less prepared. And I think that's a myth about, community college students, is that, well, they're underprepared or they're not prepared for the level of expectation in a 300 level class. I think actually going through these survey courses, they actually are better prepared. So I think there are just some myths that are, I think, worth just busting, and having these conversations to do that, so that we can get to the next step of really figuring out, how do we align courses? How do we maybe, if not change our curricular program, how do we change the way we advise students? And I think that's really valuable to have these conversations. The other thing Trish and I wanted to do is really establish a way to, how do we come together in more collaborative effort in terms of community events and whatnot. So that is, I know we're coming really close to time here. We're over time already. I don't want to, so if there are other, Trish.
I just wanted to say to Diane, I didn't mean to make that sound competitive. I was actually trying to illustrate that we have collectively so many courses in intro, which illustrates a significant interest in creative writing.
Right. I didn't think you were meaning it competitive, but sometimes, you have to kind of look at the reality, maybe say, hey, well, maybe this is a good thing because we're going to funnel more students into our advanced courses or those kinds of things, rather than kind of seeing like, gosh, where are our 2310 students going? Because we are offering fewer sections of those than we have in previous times. But also, really, and also other realities are that the humanities in the whole nation are hit hard, and that there's a lot lower enrollment in general. I have faculty I know in various different departments who are talking about it. So, so there's several things at once. And there was a little pandemic there too.
Exactly.
Well,
meaning it's several
absolutely.
sources that cause that. Yeah.
But you're also,
I prefer not to think of it as a competitive thing. I think of like CNM is sort of, like a branch. Well, we are branches of each other, so yes.
And I want to say, I feel like creative writing is the more compelling for students and just for humanity in general, given the current social, political, medical conditions. I almost feel like we need to really seize that opportunity because folks are struggling. And I think, creative expression is an outlet. Yeah, Trish.
And also to serve our students who might be struggling financially and give them that support. I think what you just said is so wise, Diane, that they can take these courses at a lower cost with us and transfer later, that we can serve more students if we have those open doors between our institutions.
I realize folks have to leave. Thank you so much. I did put in the chat, if you could send everyone, send me or Trish your ideas for collaborating across campuses, because we really want to just cultivate that relationship either through community events, classroom visits, what have you. I'd also like you to take a look at our syllabi so that we can continue this conversation at a deeper level in terms of, either curricular development or changes. And I do want to acknowledge Rebecca's comment, your wish that the intro to poetry and fiction courses could transfer as more than electives. I will tell you that going into that was my secret wish as well. So now it's out in the open, and that's sort of what I'm working to do between now, the summer, and the fall when the grant ends, to really try to figure out how do we do that. And that's part of the summit. And so I do want to continue the conversation. I'm so sorry we took more of your time today than we anticipated, but I so appreciate everyone being here, and happy National Poetry Month. So enjoy it all. And everyone, please go to the Leonardo release party and visiting writers. Thank you so much.
And there's the visiting writers information. There it is.
And I will send it out again.
Thank you, Trish and Melina, for putting this together, and everybody who's been organizing it. I think this is just so wonderful. So
thanks, yeah. Marisa, so much for being here. Your history is so relevant.
I'm trying. As long
your
as
history, please, excuse me.
I'll see you all. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you all.